Okay, let's get some practice of functional components in. One of the things we really pride ourselves at vSchool when we're teaching our curriculum is that we include a lot of spaced learning and repetition, which is a principle of teaching that helps people retain as much information as possible. As such, like before, I haven't included any boilerplate code for you to start with. So it's going to be up to you to build everything from scratch. Doing this kind of repetition is going to be really good for your memory and should help you really understand the concepts. So let's go over the objectives you have. First, you're going to set up the basic React code from scratch again. And then you'll need to create a functional component called myInfo that has an H1 with your name, a paragraph with some information about yourself, and an ordered or unordered list of the top 3 vacation spots you'd like to visit. Obviously, since we're not going to be grading this or anything, you're welcome to change this to whatever UI you'd prefer to present. And then you'll need to make sure to render the instance of your functional component to the browser. If you want a little extra challenge, although we haven't yet gone over how to style your components, feel free to search on Google how you can add some style to your page. If it's enough of a challenge just getting the functional component working, then don't worry about that. We're going to cover styling in a future lesson. One last thing before I give you some space to pause the video and try this out for yourself, I will once again get on my soapbox for the last time, I promise, that you should definitely actually do this exercise. If you're hoping to get from this course a real understanding of how React works, just passively watching isn't going to do it. So please take the time to actually do this. Okay. I won't mention that again. So go ahead, pause the video, and we'll pick up in just a few seconds and solve this together. All right, so like last time, we need to start with some of the boilerplate code. So I'm going to, once again, import React from React. Import React DOM from React DOM. And this is going to be a little out of order, but I already know that I need to render something to the page. And I already know that I'm going to call my component myInfo. So I'm going to put an instance of myInfo, get my spacing wrong, right here. And lastly, I'm going to do my getElementById root so that render knows where to put the myInfo component. Okay, now the more fun part. Let's build our function. Remember, the one thing that the functional component needs to do is return the, so to speak, HTML that we're going to be putting in the page. In reality, as you know, it's actually JSX, but sometimes it's helpful just to think of it as HTML. Since I already know this is going to cover multiple lines, I'm going to put everything inside of parentheses. Now, one thing you may have tried to do just by habit is putting an H1 and putting your name and then going to the next line and trying to put a paragraph. But think for a second what the problem with this is. If you realize that the reason this is a problem You may have tried to save this and it says adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing div or an enclosing tag. So I'm going to put this whole thing in a div. And it's a very common mistake to make, especially as you're starting. So if you made that mistake, don't worry about it. Okay, right here we should have something that is at least working. So I'm going to save this and see if it renders. And there we go. We have a good start. All I need to do is add my unordered list. And put a few list items in there. And I've always wanted to visit Thailand, let's say Japan, and I've never been to the Nordic countries, so we'll just add Nordic countries in general. And when I save this, I should see that my list shows up in the browser. As a reminder, if you look in the very upper right, there's a little left arrow. If you press that and open the side menu, there's a chance to ask questions on any pieces of code you're unfamiliar with or didn't understand. And I'm going to be trying to check these as often as I can, so if you ask a question there, I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Also, just because we've finished this example, don't be afraid to spend some time playing with this code a little bit more before moving on. Again, the more you get your hands on the code and actually play with things, the more likely this information is to actually stick and for you to be able to be productive with React. Once you feel pretty comfortable with everything we've covered so far, let's move on to the next lesson.